so I'm going to get into this article right here, just to start out. We're talking about the rubber ball game, the universal Mesoamerican sport. All right, universal Mesoamerican sport by Christopher Jones. And we begin. It says, an extremely athletic sport was played by the Aztecs, the Maya, and other peoples of pre-Hispanic Mesoamerica. All right, very important, by everybody, a lot of the tribe, not just the Maya and Aztec. Okay, that area of complex societies in what is now Mexico and Central America. All right, Central America. In the game, a heavy, solid rubber ball about 6 inches in diameter was volleyed back and forth in a specially constructed alley with sloping sidewalls. Rules usually stated that the ball be struck only with that part of the body from the waist to the knees. In some representations, the players can be seen holding handled stones and wearing large yoke, axe, or palm-shaped objects tied at the waist. They have been found in archaeological sites dated from AD 800 to 1200. Like the yoke in Figure 1, they were made of stone and were probably of help in providing a weighted resistance against the heavy ball. Earlier ball players of the classic period, AD 300 to 800, wore a variety of thigh and waist protectors of leather, cloth, and wood. Again, they had paddling. Figure 612, Aztec depictions of the sport at the time of the Spanish conquest, again, shows only a leather thigh protector. Ball court alleys and stone yokes have also been found in Puerto Rico. All right, in Puerto Rico, they did the same over there, right? These might have derived from Mesoamerica, as more certainly did the rubber ball game of the American Southwest. All right, all that originated in Mesoamerica. Version of the game without a special court was played by village tribes of the Amazon region of South America. It is possible that the Mesoamerican game originated there. All right, it is possible that it might have actually originated where? In the Amazon. Why? Because we know that rubber originated there as well, in the Amazon mostly. Even though we had rubber trees in Mesoamerica, it was actually greater in the Amazon region. Continues, says 5 ball courts have been found in the ruins of Tikal, the classic Maya site in northern Guatemala, excavated by the University Museum between 1956 and 1970. That these courts were built for the playing of rubber ball games is made clear by their characteristic long, narrow alleys and sloping side. All right, so again, ball courts in all these major cities, this is one of them. All right, do we find all these ball courts in the so-called old world on the other side of the hemisphere where they're giving credit to, you know, the origin of games? No, you don't find all that over there. You find it on this side of the world. Surfaces resembling others found all over Mesoamerica and matching descriptions by Spanish witnesses to the game. Again, I'm going to emphasize that all over Mesoamerica. We're talking about ball courts. We're going to get into that more. All right, so we're not going to find all this stuff on the so-called old world on the other side. We're not going to find this many, if at all, if they had ball courts. Not like in the Americas. The oldest, smallest, and most central of the Tikal courts is located in the southeast corner of the Great Plaza, the historical center of the site, where rows of carved stone monuments portraying the rulers are lined up in front of the temples under which these kings were buried. Another court is in the approximate center of the East Plaza, adjacent to the Great Plaza. The other 3 ball courts form the only triple court known in Mesoamerica, with identical playing alleys, side by side on the north edge of a large plaza, just across a deep ravine southwest of the Great Plaza. I had the opportunity to conduct extensive excavations in both the East Plaza and the triple ball courts. Details of the ball court architecture, development, modifications, use, associated artifacts, and special deposits are to be published in the University Museum's Tikal's Report series. In this paper, I want to project some of the present knowledge about the game onto the archaeological data from Tikal in order to gain more of an idea of what the game might have meant for the people of the community. And it continues here, says the historical evidence. By far the fullest eyewitness account of the Mesoamerican ball game course comes to us from a manuscript by a 16th century Dominican friar, Diego Duran. His family moved to Mexico around 1541, a scant 20 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan to Cortez, and Duran grew to adulthood during the brief period when Spanish domination over Mexico still depended upon the cooperation and even the enthusiastic loyalty of the native nobility and populace. Aztec princes were made governors of the cities their fathers had ruled, and American and European youths studied Latin, Spanish, and Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, together in schools started by the clergy. In one of his accounts of Aztec life, recently translated into English, Father Duran relates many personal anecdotes about the old ways, among them a delightful account of the prevalent sport. All right, so we know Diego Duran. We've read from his books before on my Hebrew series and other videos I got. He tells the story of the Mexica people, how they followed their leader Meshi over to their promised land. All right, so make sure to get those videos, go back and watch those videos. Diego Duran is quoted a lot when it comes to accounts that he saw during his time there in the 1500s when he got to Mexico. So it is a primary source. And I just wanted to, I know it looks a little small now, but I wanted to show you the map here. And I guess they're listing some of the places that has ball courts or they played sports, all right? Palenque, Uxmal, Chichen Itza. We're going to get a video from Chichen Itza. Thanks to Opemija for the video that he went there personally to film himself. He went over there. Much love to you, Opemija. Continuing, it says here, an eyewitness account. It was a highly entertaining game, an amusement for the people, especially for those who held it to be a pastime or entertainment. All right, it wasn't always about sacrificial killing. It was actually also a pastime and very entertainment. All right, just like it is today. Among them, there were those who played it with such skill, all right? Who got skill today and cunning that in 1 hour the ball did not stop bouncing from one end to the other without a miss. The players using only their buttocks and knees, never touching it with the hand, foot, calf, or arm. Both teams were so alert in keeping the ball bouncing that it was amazing. If watching a handball game among Spaniards gives us such a pleasure and amazement on seeing the skill and lightness with which some play it, how much more are to be praised those who with such cunning trickery and nimbleness play it with their backsides or knees. All right, so imagine that. It was considered a foul to touch the ball. You can't touch, no hands, with the hand or any other part of the body except the parts I have mentioned, buttocks and knees. Though this demanding sport, excellent players were formed, and aside from being esteemed by the sovereigns, they were given notable dignities, were made intimates of the royal house and court, and were honored with special insignia. All right, so they're talking about their best skillful players were actually very famous, very popular, like today, like Michael Jordan and them, very skillful, LeBron James, in football, all that, right? Like these were celebrities back then, and they got honored by the royal families. Many a time have I seen this game played, and to find out why the elders still extol it, I asked them to play it in the ancient way. But the most important factor was lacking, namely the enclosure where the contest took place, within which it was played, and the rings through which they cast and passed the ball. And it was foolish insistence of mine to try to see today something which existed in ancient times as different as the real thing from a picture, so that we can understand its form and begin to appreciate the skill and dexterity with which this game was played, it must be noted that the ball courts existed in all the illustrious, civilized, and powerful cities and towns, and those ruled by either the community or the lords, the latter stressing the game inordinately. Alright, again, let me repeat that. It existed in all the civilized and powerful cities and towns. Every powerful city, every town, what had ball courts. They played ball games. You hearing that? Why do Americans dominate most sports today, especially rubber ball games? Talking about basketball, football, right? Soccer, Brazil, right? Who dominates? A regular competition existed between the two types of communities. The ball courts were enclosed with ornate and handsomely carved walls. The interior floor was of stucco, finely polished and decorated, with figures of the god and demons to whom the game was dedicated and whom the players held to be their patrons in that sport. These ball courts were larger in some places than in others. They were built in the shape that can be seen in the illustration, narrow in the middle and wide at the ends. The corners were built on purpose so that if the player's ball fell into one, it was lost and was considered a foul. The height of the wall was anywhere between 8 and 11 feet high, running all around the court. Because of the heathen custom around the wall were planted wild palms or trees which give red seeds, whose wood is soft and light. Crucifixes and carved images are made of it today. The surrounding walls were adorned with merlins or stone statues, all spaced out. These places became filled to bursting when there was a game of all the lords, when warlike activities ceased owing to truces or other causes, thus permitting the game. So when they were in war or in times of war, this is what they were doing for their pastime, all right, playing games. The ball courts were anywhere between 100, 150, and 200 feet long, and the square corners were served as ends or goals. A great number of players stood on guard to see that the ball did not penetrate. The main player stood in the center, facing the ball, and so did the opponents, since the game was carried out similarly to the way they fought in battle or in special contests. All right, we're going to see this as a pattern, and a lot of the times we're going to read later on, we're going to keep learning. I'm going to tell you ahead of what we're going to learn is that a lot of the times they use these sports and games to train for war, to get ready, to prepare, to be fit, to be agile, to be quick. All right, in the middle of the walls of this enclosure were fixed two stones facing one another, and each had a hole in the center. Each hole was surrounded by a carved image of the deity of the game. Its face was that of a monkey. One team put the ball through the hole of the stone on one side, while the other side was used by the other team. The first to pass this ball through the hole won the prize. These stones also served as a division, for between them, on the floor, was a black or green stripe. This was done with a certain herb, and no other, which is a sign of pagan belief. Alright, now remember, we're getting Duran's account, we're getting someone else's perspective of what they're saying. So they're going to call gods and demons, right? And then they're going to say things like signs of pagan belief. All right, so we're going to dodge all the hijack. The ball always had to be passed across this line to win the game, because if the ball projected by the backsides or by the knee went bouncing along the floor and past the stripe the width of 2 fingers, no fault was committed. But if it did not pass, it was considered a foul play. The man who sent the ball through the stone ring was surrounded by all. They honored him, sang songs of praise to him, and joined him in dancing, right? So whoever made it through the hoop, he was honored, man. They started dancing with him and everything. He was given a very special reward of feathers or mantles and breech cloths, something highly prized. But what he most prized was the honor involved, all right? The honor. That was his great wealth, the honor. He's the most skillful person that day or during that time. For he was honored as a man who had vanquished many and had won a battle. It's like winning a battle. All right, so again, this was all said by Duran in the 1500s. All right, so this is his perspective. Okay, so we're going to read from this article now. It says here, Science Advances Research Article, Anthropology, Origins of the Mesoamerican Ball Game. Earliest ball court from the highlands found at Etlatongo, Oaxaca, Mexico. Waka, Oaxaca, Waka. Jeffrey P. Bloomster and Victor E. Salazar Chavez. And real quick, it says here, the ball game represents one of the most enduring and iconic features of ancient Mesoamerican civilization. Yet its origins and evolution remain poorly understood, primarily associated with the Gulf Coast and Southern Pacific coastal lowlands, while one early ball court dates to 1650 BC from Chiapas lowland. Ball courts have remained undocumented in Mesoamerican highlands until a millennium later, suggesting less involvement by highland civilizations in the ball game's evolution. We provide new data from the southern highlands of Mexico, from the early formative period 1500 to 1000 BC. All right, we're talking about what? 1500 BC? And earlier we got that ball course dates to 1650 BC. All right, we're talking about BC, before Christ, right? BC. What is this? This is 3,500 years ago. Ball courts, ball games that necessitate revising previous paradigms, along with ball player imagery. We recently excavated the earliest highland Mesoamerican ball court, dating to 1374 BC, at the site of Etlatongo, in the mystic region of Oaxaca, or Oaxaca. We conclude that early formative highland villagers played an important role in the origins of the formal Mesoamerican ball game, which later evolved into a crucial component of subsequent states. All right, so he's got his theory that these people had a big part in it. And it says here, introduction. The rubber ball game is one of the most fundamental features of ancient Mesoamerica, a pre-Columbian cultural region encompassing Guatemala, Belize, most of Mexico, and western Honduras, El Salvador. The presence of more than 2,300 probable ball courts in this region indicates the ball game's great importance to ancient Mesoamerican. It says rich visual, iconographic, and architectural data from the two best known Mesoamerican civilizations, the Maya and the Aztec, emphasized the ritual and political focus of the ball game, with symbolism that included the regeneration of life and the maintenance of cosmic order. The origin narratives of the Maya, as codified in the Popol Vuh, implicate the ball game as part of a contest between heroic mortals and underworld deities in the creation of the universe. All right, you hear that? It has a meaning and a foundation. Sports or ball games, ball courts. It's not just something that was made up for fun. And just like anything else in Mesoamerican culture, you can get the real origin story of most of what they have today, such as calendars, language, etc., etc. So ball game and ball courts is another one, all right? Numerous ball games and other athletic contests existed in Mesoamerica, only some of which involved a hard rubber ball and a masonry cord. While most Mesoamerican societies had various concurrent games, each, such as the stickball game, with their own developmental trajectories, we focus only on one. We use ball game to refer specifically to a formal pan-Mesoamerican sport played with a rubber again, ball and an architectural ball court. Players hitting the ball with their hips rather than hands. The architectural component of the ball game corresponds with the development of a more structured version of the game. While many informal and formal games were played within and beyond an architectonic setting, the hip ball game has been interpreted as the only version that generally required a formal court and is the version that appears most frequently in imagery, especially monumental art placed in public spaces. Basic architectural features shared by all ball courts, minimally an alley enclosed by two parallel lateral walls or mounds, suggest a common substratum to at least one variant of the game. The pan-Mesoamerican hip ball game that may have been somewhat standardized, recognized within and between cultural regions, played at different social-political levels in Mesoamerican states. The great variety in which additional features were appended to these basic architectural elements also expresses local and temporal diversity in practice, reinforcing both the presence of multiple games and the multifunctional nature of ball courts, which served as loci for community-based rituals, politics, and feasts, in addition to athletic contests. Athletic contests. Despite the ball game's centrality to the many societies that thrived in this region for over 3,000 years, again, for over 3,000 years, we're talking about BC times, and they're talking about things started on that side of the world over there. They don't even have rubber trees over there. How'd they get rubber trees over there? Huh? If they're supposed to be on the other side and this is native to Americas. How they got rubber balls and all that? Where's their ball courts? Where is their ball courts? You're going to see how many we find here. Its evolution during the early formative, the time when most features of Mesoamerican civilization coalescent remains obscure. We refer to the following: formative chronological phases presented in calibrated or calendar years. The initial formative 1900 to 1500 BC. Again, 1900, that's 4,000 years ago. 1900 BC, the early formative. 1500 to 1000 BC, the middle formative. And 1000 to 400 BC, the late formative. 400 BC to 100 CE or AD, right? And the terminal formative 100 to 300 AD or CE. Three types of data indicate the presence or at least knowledge of the game: ball player imagery, paraphernalia, equipment and costume elements. Again, equipment and costume elements, and architectural ball courts. The most compelling evidence of actually playing the game, the lowlands have long been favored as the place of origin and primary evolution of the ball game. The lowlands, all right? An interpretation originally based on the association of the best known source of rubber, all right? The best known source of what? Rubber, Castilla Elastica, rubber, with the plains of the Gulf and Southern Pacific coast. All right, this is native to, again, Mesoamerica, as you're reading here, and the Amazon abundantly. The rubber trees range has also been reported, however, as extending north up the Pacific coast as far as the Mexican state of Sinaloa. Chemical analysis of several archaeologically recovered Aztec rubber balls indicates Castilla Elastica as the source. In addition to imagery, archaeological research during the past 3 decades in the lowlands has reinforced lowland priority in the ball game, with early examples of rubber balls from the Gulf Coast and an actual ball court along the Pacific coast extending the ball game's origin to the final portion of the initial formative 1012. These discoveries and the lack of documented ball courts in the highlands until a millennium after the earliest known lowland court would seem to support a primarily lowland origin and development of the ball game. On the basis of our recent discovery of the earliest highland ball courts in Oaxaca, Mexico, we argue that both lowland and highland societies contributed to the evolution of the Mesoamerican ballgame, right? It didn't start first anywhere, as he's saying. It started simultaneously in all these regions, highland and lowland. An institution that profoundly affected the ritual and politics of subsequent states for 2 millennia. All right, ball game. What affected what? Ritual and politics. Subsequent states for 2 millennia. Ball games and ball courts in early Mesoamerica. The ball game became a pan-Mesoamerican phenomenon, a critical aspect of statecraft, religion, and cosmology. During the late terminal formative, reflected by the abundance of all 3 types of data. Before the late formative, however, ballgame evidence remains scattered and inconsistent. Ballgame imagery is the primary type of evidence found in the early formative, a time of emergent social-political complexity and increased inter-regional interaction throughout Mesoamerica that encompasses the apogee of Gulf Coast Olmec at San Lorenzo, Veracruz from 1400 to 1000 BC. All right, get what they're trying to tell you. Imagine all these high civilized societies, civilizations living close to each other in this region of Mesoamerica, not just there, but also in South America, but specifically here, millions of people. And so they interacted, right? And that created the ability to be able to be creating ball games, right? So many people be competitive, have different teams, and it's part of their social, political culture, their cosmology, entertainment, everything, right? History, warfare, all that. So this is all throughout Mesoamerica, and it says here, interaction between the Olmec and other early horizon societies varied regionally, and its impact remains highly contested. Recent research, however, at San Lorenzo indicates that it was the first urban center in Mesoamerica, at a different scale of social-political complexity than its contemporaries. The confluence of both ballplayer imagery at San Lorenzo and rubber balls at a ceremonial site in its realm have implicated the Olmec in the origin of the Mesoamerican ball game. All right, so they're saying that's how it all started, that they invented it, because they found that. Despite the absence of a formal ball court, all right, they didn't even have a ball court though. Our recent discovery in the highlands, however, challenges primarily Gulf origins, suggesting a broader web of regional players in the formalization of the ball game. There was more people doing it. It wasn't just the Olmec, and this particular site in San Lorenzo, they didn't even have a ball court. All right. Beyond small ceramic figurines, early horizon ball player related imagery appears on monumental stone sculpture only at San Lorenzo. Monument 34 from that site depicts a half-kneeling male figure with a thick protective belt and loincloth, trunks and pectoral perishable arms, possibly of wood, could have been manipulated to possibly signal aspects of play, found north of San Lorenzo's plateau. Tenochtitlan Monument 1 depicts a figure interpreted as a ball player and wearing thick protective belt and probable mirror pectoral positioned atop a captive, indicating an early association between the ball game and human sacrifice. In addition, some scholars interpret the multi-ton Olmec colossal heads at San Lorenzo and later Olmec sites as ball player related because of their headgear. You hear what they're telling you? Because of their headgear, they might be actually ball players, these Olmec heads. Although this visual observation has never been corroborated archaeologically, possible early horizon examples of ball player imagery in wood also come from San Lorenzo's realm. Paraphernalia and equipment discovered on the Gulf Coast extends the ball game's material record back to 1600 BC, ranging in diameter from 8 to 30 centimeters. 19 rubber balls emerged from an ancient spring at El Manatí, located just southeast of San Lorenzo. The great variety and size of the rubber balls indicates a variety of functions, while some may have been offerings burned as incense at this ritual site. Others potentially saw action in ball games. with the different sizes reflecting different types of games. All right, so all these different rubber balls, it wasn't just for games. It could have been burning them. While an architectural ball court provides the most compelling evidence for the ball game, any level surface could serve as a playing field for various sports, right? Even if they didn't have ball courts, doesn't mean they weren't playing other sports in other parts of their town. The Aztecs played games both in open fields and in masonry courts. All right? Open fields and masonry courts, which were primarily restricted to large centers, indicating a hierarchy in the setting of games and associated architecture. Athletic activities and/or dancing have been proposed in flat open spaces as far back as before 7000 BC, based on two parallel rows of boulders at Gil-Xi in the valley of Oaxaca, located close to modern ground surface. Questions remain about this space, which is also interpreted as a street or empty space between houses. Many features of the Mesoamerican ballgame first developed in less structured contexts, associated with both more consistent and widely shared rules and increasing social-political complexity. Formal ball courts both reinforce leaders' authority while integrating communities. As opposed to games played in open fields, formal ball courts also impose more restrictions on viewership. All right, special privileges to be on the stands. They're saying, you get what I'm saying? So in the fields, anybody can go see, but it wasn't just anybody that can go to the ball courts, right? They get filled up, and then it gets to the point where you can't see because it's in the ball court, it's inside. All right, so there's special restrictions, right, from viewership. Thus, discovering the origins of the ball court underlies understanding the ball game's evolution as a crucial social-political institution of later Mesoamerican states. Discovered in the coastal lowlands of southern Chiapas, the earliest formal ball court was built around 1650 BC, 3,000, almost 4,000 years ago. All right, at Paso de la Amada. You hear this? A regional ceremonial center with a core of public space largely abandoned before the early horizon, located at a right angle to one of several mounds interpreted as platforms for the residences of lineage leaders. The ball court appears to be the center's only non-residential structure. Its long axis is 39 degrees east of true north. Excavations exposed nearly 10% of the ball court, composed of two narrow parallel lateral mounts, averaging 75.9 meters in length, defining a 6.8 meter wide alley or playing field with low benches extending from the lateral mounts to the alley. The ball court was open at both ends and made of compacted earth, not stone, and estimated to have been about 3 meters high with a total width of 21.5 meters. Says here results. We challenge the lowland paradigm by providing evidence that the earliest highland ball court dates to the early formative, nearly a millennium earlier than any previous highland architectural data, and just over 2 centuries after the Paso de la Amada court, we contribute 2 types of ball game data recently excavated at Etlatongo, remains of 2 formal superimposed architectural ball courts and associated ball player ceramic figurines, stratigraphy, ceramic artifacts, and an assay of 11 carbon samples support the dating of the ball court. Early formative Etlatongo and its ball courts. Located in the Nochistlan Valley of the Mixteca Alta Oaxaca, the site of Etlatongo was the focus of substantial excavations from 2015 to 2017. All right, this is recent, right? We're in 2020, right? By the formative Etlatongo project, lacking any primary evidence of an occupation earlier in the early formative. Etlatongo became a 26-ha early horizon regional center with at least one area of public space, Mount 11, and several areas of probable higher status domestic occupations to its north and east. During the early horizon, Etlatongo villagers engaged in substantial interrogational interaction in both raw materials such as obsidian and shell, they were trading crystals and shells, and ceramic vessels and figurines, some of which exhibit style and complex iconography associated with the Gulf Olmec. The ball courts represent the first large-scale modification of the natural landscape at Etlatongo. While the poorly documented Structure 1.1 may represent a precedent, Structure 1.2's creators had a template in mind as they constructed the first ball court as one event representing substantial labor and planning. The first Etlatongo ball court has a plan view roughly similar to the Paso de la Mada court, although its orientation is more similar to those of contemporaneous public architecture at the closest regional center, San Jose Mogote. The second ball court, Structure 1.3, shows a substantial change in layout with the removal of banquets and the greater height of volume of the sloping lateral mounts. These changes may reflect variations in the game. The ball court endured for only 6 or 7 generations, with the first court used longer than the second ball court. Alright, 6 or 7 generations, that's a lot of time going by. While there are no contemporaneous highland courts for comparison, similarities in shape or variations in orientation noted above with the Paso de la Amada court indicate a very early origin for both the formal template of the court and the regional variations and architectural details exhibited by ball courts of later Mesoamerican civilizations. Despite the more extensive excavations at San Jose Mogote, such ball player imagery is nearly lacking, as isn't any evidence of ball court at this time. So in these places that are supposedly linked to Olmecs, there is no ball player imagery that early, and there's not even any ball courts there. So you can't give the whole credit of ball games and playing, all that to Olmecs. It was actually all over the place, and these people, in this village, Etlatongo, had it even earlier. The combination of ball courts and ball player figurines indicates a much deeper entanglement at Etlatongo with the ball game interregional interaction and associated societal transformations. The commitment to the ball game involved not only the labor of building 2 courts, but also the adoption of potentially exotic imagery and foreign materials. The rubber balls used at Etlatongo would have been imported. The Olmec may have played an important role in the creation of enduring aesthetic tropes for ball player imagery and ball game cosmology, and the lowland undoubtedly contributed rubber. The presence, however, of both an early ball court, Paso de la Armada, and early horizon highland courts in Etlatongo, contemporaneous to the apogee of San Lorenzo, for which no architectural court has yet been found, underscores greater heterogeneity in the development of the formal ball court and ball game played within it, with contributions from both the highlands and lowlands. While the Olmec may have played an important role in many aspects of the Mesoamerican ball game's evolution, the creation of the formal ball court appears to have taken place outside of the Gulf Coast. Alright, it wasn't the Olmec who did it first. They made it popular, it seems. Built during a time of emergent social-political complexity throughout Mesoamerica, the Etlatongo ball courts are implicated in these changes. Building the ball courts and staging athletic contests and associated activities would have engaged and integrated elements of the community, but may also have privileged roles of nascent leaders. Now, in conclusion, it says here, the Etlatongo ball courts are the earliest known from highland Mesoamerica. The first court, constructed between 1443 and 1305 BC, is 800 years older than are those from the central Mexican highland and over 1,000 years earlier than any ball court in Oaxaca. Rather than early ballgame evidence being primarily associated with the lowlands, our results show that highland villagers participated in ballgames marked by formal ball courts during the early formative and were important players in its origins and evolution, not the Olmecs, with architectural modifications from the earliest to latter of the 2 Etlatongo ball courts, perhaps associated with changes in the game. The construction of an architectural ball court represents both more formalized rules for the game and more complex social and regional interactions. The first highland ball court emerged during the early horizon, a time of increasing social political complexity and inter-regional interaction. We argue that ball courts provided an important venue that promoted increasing differentiation of leaders and promoted interaction between polities of different regions. Other highland villages may have been familiar with the ball game, but lacked a formal ball court, perhaps confined at this time to regional centers such as Etlatongo. Ball game imagery materialized the increasing interaction among nascent leaders, some of whom at Etlatongo were depicted as Olmec-style ball players. The association between elites and ball player imagery and regalia is well documented in later Mesoamerican civilizations, such as the Maya. The origin of at least some ball player imagery at Etlatongo may have had a Gulf Olmec inspiration. The lack of a ball court at San Lorenzo earlier or contemporaneous to those at Etlatongo, or at the same time, suggests, however, that the Olmec did not have a primary role in the plan of the actual ball court. The ball court plan first materialized at Paso de la Mada, while the architecture of the two early horizon ball courts at Etlatongo displays substantial change and local innovation, suggesting both highland and lowland roles in the evolution of the pan-Mesoamerican ball game. Similar to the Paso de la Mada ball court, the Etlatongo ball court is unique to its contemporaneous region, with nearly a millennium separating these early courts from the next ball court documented in their respective regions. As ball courts in later Mesoamerican societies generally form part of a greater network of courts, we anticipate that the discovery of other contemporaneous ball courts in the highlands will further enrich our understanding of the Etlatongo courts in their larger Mesoamerican context. All right, so that was Dido talking about the various networks of other courts, competition. They travel into other courts and other courts come to them, right? Or other people, right? Other teams. All right, so that was the article. This was a great one, letting us know that, it wasn't just the Olmec. People like to just generalize, give credit to the Olmec for like all this and everything. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. I got more videos to show, that there's older people there in this region, So again, this was Science Advances, Origins of the Mesoamerican Ball Game. Earliest ball court from the highlands, Etlatongo, Oaxaca, Mexico, by Jeffrey P. Bloomer and Victor E. Salazar Chavez. Remember, this is a very scholarly article and all the evidence that they went to do. Again, this is recent, 2017. All right, so ball courts everywhere, right? We've seen so many different ones. Again, here's one at Xochicalco. Look at that mountainous region, the highland. They've made a part for the ball game. And another clay figure right here, Mesoamerican ball court. Just wanted to show that. See that? Ceramic sculpture from Western Mexican tomb showing players engaged in Mesoamerican ball game. So we read a little bit about ball courts being found in the Southwest U.S. So I wanted to just real quick show some of them. It says outdoor trail here. The Pueblo Grande Museum outdoor exhibits trail takes visitors through the Hohokam archaeological ruin site of Pueblo Grande. Visitors will see the archaeological features of a prehistoric platform and ball court, the doorways to the past. Hohokam houses exhibit consistent of an adobe compound and pit house cluster, and as well as agriculture and desert plain exhibits. It says here the ball court. Ball courts may have been the center of village life at one time. All right, this was the center of village time even in the Southwest U.S. They were oval, bowl-shaped depressions in the ground, surrounded by earthen embankments or mounds of dirt, similar to the bleachers or grandstands of sports arenas today. These embankments would have allowed dozens of spectators to watch what was happening. At each end of the court were openings that may have been a type of goal, into which players attempted to place a rubber or stone ball. However, we do not know what the ball game looked like, and we do not know that it was a game as we think of them. There is evidence they were associated with markers or trade relationships. Well, we know they were playing games, and we saw all the different reasons why they had these ball games and ball courts. All right, it says here in the Phoenix Basin, the Hohokam brought 70,000 acres under cultivation with their elaborate network of irrigation canals. Along the canals, there were interdependent villages whose residents shared the work of constructing, maintaining, and managing the canals. In the larger communities, there were basin-like structures which archaeologists have identified as ball courts. You see this? That's a ball court. So they had the time to make a ball court to play. All right? Hohokam region, Hohokam Indians, and the Phoenix Basin, it says here, this is a ball court right here. See that? It says ball courts were an important part of the ancient civilizations of Mesoamerica, Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras, such as the Maya. In Mesoamerica, the ball game which was played on these courts was often a ceremonial event which tied different communities together. We already got that right. Communities came together. At about 600 CE, the archaeological data shows the contact between Hohokam and the civilizations of Mexico intensified. This marked the beginning of what archaeologists call the colonial period. Imports from the civilization of Mexico at this time include cast copper bells, macaws, which are valued for their feathers, and mirrors made from bits of iron pyrite. Hohokam communities built ball courts between 700 and 1100 CE or AD, while the Mesoamerican ball courts were generally built out of stone. In Arizona desert, the Hohokam built theirs by digging into the desert and piling the soil up on either side. Some of the ball courts were 250 feet, 76 meters in length, and 90 feet, 27 meters in width. In some instances, they were dug up to 9 feet, nearly 3 meters into the subsoil. All right, ball courts in this area too. It says here, Archaeology Southwest Magazine. All right, so this is their website, explains their company here. So they're showing us this image here. Now, this was very interesting. That's why I put it here. Basically, this is where they were cooking the food while people were in the ball games. All right, it says half-excavated massive horno or stoves, earth ovens, located in a concentration of such features near the ball court. These roasting facilities may have been used during feasts, at an inauguration of the ball court, or perhaps for providing food for ball court construction crews. You hear that? They had food tailgating, yeah? Just like football tailgating today, right? Barbecue. Barbecue's a Taino word. It was created here. It says here the first of 3 ball courts was built at Grui during the first half of the 9th century. This feature was similar in size and appearance to the massive Court 1 at Snaketown. The Grui ball court may have even slightly larger, with a playing surface roughly 2/3 the size of a modern football field. Unfortunately, only the floor is still preserved, so the exact size of the berms that enclose the court remains unknown. Still, assuming they were comparable to the berms associated with Court 1 at Snaketown, we estimate that the Grui ball court required about 1,000 persons a day of labor to build up. Up to 700 people could have stood atop the berm and watched events that took place on the court below. 700 people can watch. Most archaeologists believe that a variant of the Mesoamerican ball game was played on these courts, though the possibility has been raised that they were used for other purposes, such as ceremonial dancing or worship. Regardless, they likely served as integrative facilities that brought together members of the community and helped forge a sense of group solidarity. All right, so here's another ball court they unearthed. This is again in the Southwest U.S. There's actually a lot of ball courts there. Yeah, there's a lot of ball courts there. This is one they're, excavating there. They found. All right, this is another one here. You see that indent on the floor? That was a ball court. People would stand outside and watch. Ball court in the Southwest U.S. is top. Recent excavations in the Grui side ball court. All right, so the top is the Grui side ball court. Possibly the largest court ever built by the Hohokam. All right, that was photographed by the Northern Research Inc. And then the bottom says Ball Court 1 at Snaketown. All right, Snaketown. Half of the court was excavated in 1934, 1935, similar size and form to the excavated Grui court. It provides an approximation of what the Grui court may have looked like prior to modern land leveling. Photographed courtesy of the Arizona State Museum. All right, it says right here, for reasons that are still poorly known, the focus of the settlement began to shift from Grui to Casa Grande in the last half of the 10th century. However, it was not until the second half of the 11th century, after the large ball court had fallen out of use, that the population of Grui dropped sharply. A new ceremonial precinct with a new ball court was probably established at Casa Grande. So wherever the people went, the ball courts did too. And again, this is another one that says excavating the ball court. This is 1935. This is what they were talking about. What they were excavating. Ball courts all over the southern U.S. as well.